the easiest yay.
I'm not going to give this a full yes, but I'm also not going to give it a no. Welcome back to On Deadline, the Washington Examiner's political game show. I'm Christian Daytalk.
And I'm Tiana Low-Desher.
Each episode, we bring you the biggest headlines in politics, give our takes, and then you get to vote on which one of us was more right at the end. Before we get started, don't forget to like this episode, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. We're starting above the fold, and there's really only one story we want to talk about this week: the brewing civil war within MAGA, kicked off by Jeffrey Epstein from beyond the grave. So, Tiana, why are ostensible MAGA loyalists mad at the president, and is he actually politically vulnerable over this situation?
Despite Pam Bondi's promise at the start of the second Trump administration that she had the full Epstein file crime list on her desk, she and the FBI have conceded. They believe Jeffrey Epstein indeed killed himself. He was not keeping a massive client list of fellow participants in child rape, and he was not using extensive blackmail with this child rape information of these client lists. Now, MAGA's quite mad because they believe that Jeffrey Epstein might be a Mossad agent, that you have Bill Gates and everyone else was secretly participating in this with him. In fact, the truth might be a little bit more sinister. People like Bill Gates were susceptible to blackmail by Jeffrey Epstein for totally banal reasons, such as Bill Gates' affair with a 20-year-old Russian bridge player while he was still married to Melinda. Is it worse to actually be friends with a pedophile for access to fame, fortune, and power than to actually just participate in it yourself? This is one of the realities that people don't want to look at. And why are they mad at Donald Trump? Because they need the conspiracy theory to be true, when in fact, this is not an issue that most Americans, especially his base, cares about, right? Donald Trump just came off a 6-week winning streak of getting the one big beautiful bill, taking out Iran's nuclear weapons, bringing global peace, and delivering real kitchen table victories, no tax on tips, preventing the largest tax hike that would have been in history if TCJA had not been extended. And they want to blow up the DOJ? I'm sorry, isn't Pam Bondi busy prosecuting the universities and the drug cartels and illegals?
I think you're correct. I think it's funny because this didn't have to be this way, you're right. And it's not really an issue that matters to most voters, specifically those swing state Obama-Trump voters who've decided the last 3 elections, really the last 5 elections if we're going back to 2008. But Donald Trump and his allies kept spinning this thing up over the last, 7 years or so, since the entire Epstein stuff kicked off for the second time. And they have no one to blame but themselves, because these people on the internet, and the left has the, similar dynamics on that end, they aren't rational. And so no matter what the explanation is, it was never going to be good enough. Whether you believe that Donald Trump and his top aides are shielding the president from, another big scandal, or whether you believe, which I, for the record, do, that, quite frankly, there just wasn't enough evidence to pursue prosecutions on this huge conspiracy versus just the actual sex crimes themselves. So, looking forward, I mean, I hope this is a lesson that the Democrats can take, is look, we need to stop spinning ridiculous lines just to animate people online and juice our engagement and do all this stuff and sell ad space, whatever. Stick to the kitchen table issues, stick to things that actually impact American households rather than just these billionaires in the tabloids, and let the chips fall from there. I think it's fun. I mean, it would be hilarious if it wasn't so sad and there were all these people who were hurt, throughout Epstein's decades of heinous crimes. But it is kind of funny to me that they created this problem and now they're having to deal with it.
And to be clear, there are a couple of people who have been publicly accused of participating in the child sex abuse with Epstein and with Ghislaine Maxwell, who is still in prison, right? So Jean-Luc Brunel famously is one of them. Mm-hmm. He was then eventually arrested in France and charged with child rape. And he managed to, of course, kill himself, like all the billionaires can do when they're in prison. But so he is someone that was publicly accused, and then he was indeed facing criminal prosecution in France. Someone else, so Alan Dershowitz was also accused by Virginia Giuffre, and he has maintained 1,000 times over his complete and categorical innocence. Virginia Giuffre, unfortunately, I don't know if she was maliciously lying at any point, but her credibility as a witness was called into question because she had so many mental health issues, and apparently now we realize she was dealing with an incredibly abusive, like physically violent husband. But the point is that just because Virginia Giuffre said it once doesn't make it, that's not proof, right? And part of why there are rules barring these federal prosecutors from unveiling all the grand jury testimony is because people can make really outlandish claims during grand jury proceedings.
Yeah.
And you don't want to destroy someone's life, Kavanaugh style, over a claim that a mentally unwell sex abuse victim of Jeffrey Epstein says when she's running through, I was with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine, and there was a third person, and I think it was, and then all of a sudden you're accusing Alan Dershowitz, who maintains he's 100% innocent. As far as Donald Trump is concerned, you know, I'm sure there are just some people who are just actually distraught about the conspiracy theory for the same reason that people get into conspiracy theories in the first place, which is, yes, that coping mechanism to deal with the ugliness of the world. With Tucker Carlson, it's all about, oh, Epstein was actually a Mossad agent. Think about the scope of that accusation. You are saying that Donald Trump, who is controlled by no one, you're saying except for the Israelis, that he would conceal a vast network of child rape and multiple participants letting them off in order to protect an Israeli intelligence scheme? That's an accusation of treason. Kristen, as our resident lib,
Yeah.
does Donald Trump control MAGA? Is this a deal breaker for him? Or will, Jack Posobiec and Tucker Carlson find that they're in over their heads?
This is an interesting question because it raises the idea of what is MAGA, right? And I think the answer isn't necessarily something that anyone in the current Republican coalition wants to hear. MAGA is whatever Donald Trump wants to say it is. It doesn't matter what the prevailing narrative from the day before is. Like we saw with Ukraine, Donald Trump loves to change his mind. And therefore, throughout his entire political career, he has gotten his supporters to bend over backwards, apologizing for decisions he's made which seem to run contrary to whatever ideological beliefs MAGA is prescribed. But quite literally, the Trump coalition is so big now. Everything he does is bound to piss off one wing of it, because even on economics or on foreign policy or immigration, there are conflating ideas at present here. So does Donald Trump control MAGA? Donald Trump is MAGA. Unfortunately, none of MAGA, quote unquote, can control Donald Trump. And that's why you're seeing the backlash with Epstein. That's why you're seeing the backlash with the strikes on Iran or flipping on giving new military aid to Ukraine. MAGA is what Donald Trump says it is. Therefore, he has no problems of losing those voters. That being said, Republicans have a big time problem on their hands heading into the midterms. We knew it was already going to be hard to drive the turnout that we saw in 2024 because Trump isn't on the ballot, although Trump might be on the ballot in North Carolina. Shout out Laura. But that's a story for another time. But the Democrats are really trying to dive in here to split the base. And I have conflicted feelings on it because on the one hand, I like to see them doing something new, jumping on Jeffrey Epstein, although that's not exactly new in and of itself, but as a means of fundraising and attacking the current administration, because we do know basically everything they've been doing hasn't worked, right? So it's at least a little bit of a change. But again, like I mentioned at the top, the people who actually care about this, however you want to describe them, ideologically far-right conservatives, conspiracy theorists, QAnon people, whatever, there's no shot in hell that they will vote Democrat, right? The people who don't care about this story, who I think this is where Democrats are wrong in their fundraising pitch, are those, swing state, blue-collar voters. They voted for Obama because they felt abandoned by Republicans after all the manufacturing jobs dried up. And then they voted for Trump because they felt abandoned by Democrats because their economic station didn't change at all. In fact, it got worse after the Great Recession because they lost their house and blah, 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 blah. Those are the people who determine elections. And I don't think, absent rampant inflation by Joe Biden and just the president very clearly being not physically or mentally capable of the rigors of office, that gave Trump and Republicans sort of a free pass.
Yeah.
I don't think either party since the 2016 election has really figured out how to mobilize that group, except by saying, look at how terrible of a job the other group did.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the big question moving forward. How do Republicans maintain control of that group after tariffs potentially drive up prices? After people get kicked off of, health insurance potentially, after the big beautiful bill or rural hospitals shut down, everything the Democrats are talking about. But it's also on Democrats to make sure that they can translate that dissentiment into blue votes. Otherwise, again, you've just failed objectively, and we're going to get, President Vance or President, whoever, and we're going to be in the same situation.
To an extent, the same problem that Democrats had with the immense celebrity of Barack Obama is what they have with Donald Trump, which is that they're so uniquely charismatic that the loyalty is personal to them. And when they are not on the ballot, it just doesn't translate. Which gets me to the, identitarian right of it all, which is that Tucker Carlson didn't get all the J6ers to storm the Capitol. Donald Trump did. Jack Posobiec was not the one who was shot in Butler, Pennsylvania, and his instinct, unlike what mine would have been, or I think what most people's would have been, which is to, try and scramble away and scream, fight, 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 right? There is almost if the cult of personality around Trump is more similar to something of a medieval monarch, where he is considered what tethers the people to
God.
And I know I sound, I'm being flippant about it, but frankly, it just doesn't translate. So the sheer hubris of those who think they can out MAGA Trump, part of the reason why I think MAGA really resonated with those Youngstown, Ohio, Western Pennsylvania voters is specifically because it is outcome driven. It is not deontological. And there are issues with it. If the incentive structure is bad, if the incentive structure is I want to stay in the White House even though I lost the election, you get January 6th. When the incentive structure is good, which is I'm at the beginning of my presidency for a second term and I want to leave a great legacy, then you get ending the Iran nuclear program and, him triangulating away from the Liberation Day tariffs, right? We see Donald Trump responds to incentive in a way that other politicians often don't. Most politicians in Washington, they do double down. They don't really learn.
No.
Trump, to his credit, changes when the results are not what he wants. And what he wants right now is everyone to have more purchasing power in their real wages. That's it. The point is that anything Democrats do that is not specifically answering one question, and that is, how do you increase the real purchasing power of people's wages? They are losing the war. They just have completely lost sight of that. And so as long as Donald Trump does care about that, he will continue to win. Now it's time for yeas and nays. Sometimes we'll agree, other times we'll disagree.
Activists overplayed their hand in the reaction to the ICE raids in California.
The easiest yay.
I'm not going to give this a full yes, but I'm also not going to give it a no. So do with that information what you will. Why are you voting yes?
So this was the second largest ICE workplace raid in history. The first was during Trump's first term. This one in Ventura County was a marijuana farm. They arrested 319 illegal aliens, found 14 children who they suspect were illegally working as child labor. And they found a man who was convicted already of attempted rape and of child molestation. Again, Donald Trump takes the center of issues. If he starts going after, abuela who works as a housekeeper and outside of staying in the country illegally, has never gotten so much as a parking ticket, right? If that winds up being the bulk of the arrests, the public will really sour on it, right? Because most people are not ideological about this. Most people, their disgust factor when they hear of 319 illegal aliens working at a farm for a drug that is still federally illegal while you employ child labor and at least one of the 319 has been convicted of child rape, they're fine with that. And I think it goes to the problem, Christian. You know, when we were discussing this, I said, you know, even if like they went after, you know, like an actual agricultural farm, like even if they went after lettuce or tomatoes, maybe I'd be like a little more weary of it, just because I think it's like 2/3 of all employment, 2/3 of all agricultural employment are workers who lack proper documentation. That's not the same things as saying they're all definitely illegal, but it's just like we can't prove the citizenship yet of 2/3 of all agricultural workers. But then I thought about it, and I thought, you know, if there's 1 out of 319 illegals is convicted of child rape, maybe I don't mind if they go after the tomato factories. And this is why Trump is not overstepping. Tom Homan said on CNN, this is why we want the states to do their jobs. If Gavin Newsom let his police go after the actual bad guys, the ones that all of us agree are, we don't want child rapists, people who have DUIs, people who have committed violent burglaries. If they went after those people, you would not need this.
Yeah, I don't agree with what you're saying specifically. I don't disagree with it necessarily either, though. I think when it comes to how the Trump administration has sown so much confusion, specifically about exemptions or a secondary pathway on the deportations for agricultural workers, I'm not surprised to see a protest like this. That being said, the response from Democrats and activists is similarly lacking, because much like these aren't black and white issues, like every single ICE raid is not the same, especially, like you pointed out, at a business which is technically federally illegal, at a business which we now know is confirmed to be breaking child labor laws. I think I read 8 of the 14 children were unaccompanied migrants, so they don't know how they got there, were they trafficked, whatever.
Yeah.
But also, you shouldn't be trying to obscure the less savory parts of what you're defending just to say, oh, these were only ag workers picking strawberries, right? Lying to the American public is bad. This is how you end up with such a one-sided immigration debate, and one which I genuinely think a position that is more humane and more empathetic and like thinking about the world the way ideologically we want to be thinking about the world, they miss this entirely. And there's just one anecdote. There was a man who was killed in this raid. He died following injuries sustained in the raid. He wasn't killed. He climbed up on the roof of a greenhouse. ICE said they actually weren't even pursuing this guy, and he got scared, and he fell, and he broke his neck, and he fractured his skull, and he has since passed away, as confirmed by the family. Why weren't Democrats talking about this is the problem with the way these ICE raids are being carried out? Why are they debating, you know, the semantics about, like, we need our ag workers, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, someone literally died because he wasn't an illegal immigrant, but he was still scared about being separated from his family or his friends or his livelihood. Like, that's the argument and the position Democrats should be taking. They shouldn't just be saying Donald Trump does something so bad, right?
Yeah.
They can both be true, but like be honest and be thoughtful with how you're creating your argument. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels, and we're going to see more of what we saw over the last 6 weeks. Feckless resistance and, you know, just failure to change, which again, we're heading into the midterms. Like, we're going to see horse races for who the Democratic nominee for president is going to be very soon. There is no time to mess about. I was about to curse, and I stopped myself because I'm getting angry, but like, just be better, guys.
Yeah.
Come on. Protest, yes. Show your opposition, but do it in a new and constructive way, and don't just be firing guns off in the crowd at law enforcement officers, which also happened over the weekend, by the way.
Yes.
Like,
ICE agents have been
better.
attacked, and like part of the reason why they're wearing the masks is because the families are being doxxed. So like where the kids of these ICE agents are going to school, that has been posted, and that's why they started doing the mask policy.
Yeah.
Here's one challenge I have for Democrats. Under Joe Biden, the DHS, technically it's the HHS because the HHS is responsible for overseeing minors. They lost track of over 250,000 minors. And remember, on like day one of the Biden administration, Joe Biden made it illegal for DHS to DNA test people who are coming across the border. So when you released people from, original detention, you could not verify that a man with a child was actually the father or the uncle.
Yeah.
They often didn't have any papers, right? So it's not like, oh, here's my passport and here's my child's passport. So we have no idea how many of these minors who aren't even missing are actually with their biological parents or legal guardians. How many of these kids were trafficked? How many of these girls, and also for that matter boys, were sexually abused and have been, prostituted and child trafficked? I need Democrats to answer the one hypothetical. If at a rate of 319 people, we had 14 children and at least one convicted child rapist, if that, let's say that fraction holds across, like what number is acceptable to you?
That being said, it's time for us to switch gears and fill in the blank.
Blank benefits the most from Eric Adams staying in the New York City mayoral race.
This is difficult. On its face, I'm going to say Zoran Mamdani, obviously, our resident socialist, whatever you want to call him.
He's
Democratic nominee for mayor.
He's communist. He wants to nationalize the grocery stores. He says in a domestic violence case, you shouldn't even call in the police.
No, let's show the math, though, because there was a poll that came out late last week showing Eric Adams, again, the sitting mayor, in third place in this race, behind both Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo, who is running as an independent for now. We'll see how that plays out. But I think, again, Mamdani has already beat Cuomo in the primary. Eric Adams is running as an independent, or whatever his third party is. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what it's called. Because he didn't think he could win the primary. Naturally, these two guys are both chasing a centrist, older block of Democratic voters. Those people weren't voting for Mamdani already, right?
Yeah.
So they will split votes for themselves, and it will benefit him. I do think there is a dark horse here, though, and it's perennial Republican candidate for mayor Curtis Sliwa and his maroon beret, who, again, there was talk before the primary about the Trump administration needs to give Curtis Sliwa a job so he can get out of the race and clear the field for Adams, because they thought it was going to be against Cuomo. I'm not really sure, mostly because, again, to my knowledge, at least in the 21st century, we haven't had an avowed democratic socialist or communist or whatever you want to call him nominated to run for office for anything. And so, I have no idea how this is going to go. I'm just enjoying the memes and the TikToks, to be honest, because there's one thing that Zoran has over everyone else in the field, and it's youth, and it's a clear understanding of how to campaign on social media. And politics aside, I think that goes a long way in 2025.
Yeah. You know who wins with Eric Adams staying in the race? New York City, the greatest city in the world.
Gosh.
America wins.
Why?
America wins.
Elaborate.
Okay. Eric Adams is guilty of one thing, and that is calling out Joe Biden's open borders BS. And that is why he could not win a Democratic primary, because in 2024, throughout the whole year, he was calling it out. He was saying, why do we still have the Roosevelt Hotel completely shut down? Why do we still have the entire Row Hotel shut down? Why do we have schools and community centers we still have to use to house these migrants? We need to get rid of them. Shut down the border. Eric Adams has presided in, I think it's 6 straight consecutive quarters of declining violent crime. He's like the first mayor who has figured out how to get rid of the rats in the trash problem.
Which is a big deal.
It is a big, I know it sounds crazy to be like trash cans, trash cans. But Giuliani couldn't even do that, right?
Yeah.
And Giuliani arguably is the best mayor New York had, in at least this century.
I mean, he made Times Square safe.
Yes, he made Times Square safe. And so Eric Adams, is he's obviously not perfect, but land use reform, increasing housing permits, New York, I think people forget, New York, statistically speaking, is a safer city than the national average. New York is safer than most of America. New York is exponentially safer than DC, right? He's rearmed the cops on the subway. Like, it is. So no, is he perfect? No, he's still a liberal. Like, this is not like who I would, in perfect world, like TNLO with like President Paul Ryan. Like, no, it wouldn't be Eric Adams as mayor. But the point is, he has a record to run on of bringing down crime, good economy, you know, tourism up, which is not true in other cities, right? Look at like Los Angeles, like they're having huge issues. Andrew Cuomo ran such a bad campaign that he didn't get the oppo that Zoran Mondani said that he was Black African American on his Columbia application. His dad was a Columbia professor and he still didn't get in. I mean, that's pretty bad, right? So I think it's Cuomo has to drop out. Sliwa, I would hope President Trump, like recognizing what's at stake here, just gives Sliwa some sort of, you know, patronage position in the administration. Because the fact is that New York, unlike Chicago, which can be sent to hell by Brandon Johnson and like not incur too much national damage, you can't move the New York Stock Exchange out of New York.
No. You think Adams can win with Cuomo staying in the race?
No, but I think if Cuomo got out,
You think one of them will bend?
I think Mamdani wins in a three-way split. I think he might even win two-way with Cuomo.
Interesting.
Just because I think you have like a lot of people that stay home. Eric Adams would get, I know it's not totally borne out in the polling yet, but the problem with polling this early in a race and also with this many candidates splitting it is the demographic breakdowns are noise. So even though like I'm sure like the levels are accurate in terms of total, you can't trust the crosstabs completely. So like some of the crosstabs are saying Cuomo's doing better with Black voters than Eric Adams. I do not believe that for a second.
Don't trust the polls. You heard it first from Tiana, folks.
Don't go crosstab diving when you have this many candidates. You can't go crosstab diving. I think if Cuomo's out, and I think Eric Adams, he rallies the older voters, he rallies the working class, he rallies the Black voters, and he also rallies the Jews.
Luckily, we've got a whole nother year to wait and see what happens. But anyway, that's all the time we've got for this week. Don't forget to let us know in the comments who you think won this week's episode. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. I'm Christian Daytalk.
And I'm TNLO Desher.
In the meantime, you can go check out more of our great reporting at washingtonexaminer.com.